This will probably come as no surprise to you if you're a parent yourself, but since the birth of my little one almost 2 years ago now, I've been devouring parenting books left and right. And as a registered dietitian, of course, child nutrition books are pretty high up on my list. But what I've come to discover is that there are very little books that are specifically aimed at vegan parents and their families. And I've probably covered all of the ones I've discovered so far in a video I made last year, which I'll link in the cards above and the description box below in case you want to check it out. But with that said, vegan-specific nutrition books aren't the only way to gather really good advice on how to feed your vegan child. And that's why in this video, I want to share 5 of my favorite child nutrition books that I found super useful, and although they're not specifically aimed at vegan parents or families, share useful concepts that are applicable to vegans and non-vegans alike. The first book is Born to Eat by Leslie Schilling and Wendy Jo Peterson. And like most books on my list, this one's written by 2 registered dietitians, which I find is a really good starting point because it greatly increases the odds that this book will be based on science rather than the latest nutrition fad, which I find really encouraging because I don't have that much free time, as most parents don't, and I don't want to be wasting my time reading a book that's not based on science and just based on someone's opinion. Now, this book surely doesn't disappoint. It focuses on the 6 to 36-month-old stage, and it takes a self-feeding or baby-led weaning approach to feeding. That's the main focus, and that's also the main way that I've relied on to introduce solids to my little one. What I love about this book is that it's split up in sections based on each life stage. So for example, 6 months, 7 to 8 months, 9 to 12 months, 12 to 24 months, and 24 to 36 months. And each section focuses solely on the most important things to keep in mind for that age group. The chapters are also short, which makes it really easy to get a little bit of reading done after my little one goes to bed without feeling like I have to commit a really large part of my evening to finishing a chapter. This book also comes with handy tables and concrete examples of food combinations you can make. And of course, not all of these are vegan, but you can definitely pick and choose the vegan options to make these meal suggestions work for your family. And this is what I've personally done, so if you want to save yourself the work, simply pop over to the Veggies and More website and download your own vegan appropriate versions for free. This book also answers common questions that parents often have. For example, how many meals should I start with at first, and should I only introduce one food at a time? And it also provides tips on how to meal plan or put together a balanced lunchbox, in addition to providing a few handy recipes. The second book I'd like to share is called The Parent's Guide to Baby-Led Weaning by Jennifer House. And this book is actually the first book that I read on the topic. It's also written by a registered dietitian, and it covers everything you need to know about baby-led weaning, which is a less traditional food introduction method that consists of skipping purees altogether and offering babies finger-sized foods that are of course in an appropriate size and texture for their age and feeding abilities. This book also has a section about troubleshooting common difficulties and another about responding to commonly asked questions about baby-led weaning. And it's also loaded with meal plans adapted to different age groups, as well as quick tips on how to modify family meals so that they become suitable for your baby. Parents who seek recipes will be really pleased to hear that the whole second part of this book is solely dedicated to baby-led weaning appropriate recipes, which, although mostly not vegan, can be easily veganized. The third child nutrition book I've enjoyed reading this past year is called Fearless Feeding by Jill Castle and Marianne Jacobson. And as with the previous 2 books that I've just discussed, this one is also written by 2 registered dietitians, and it discusses how to raise healthy eaters. But this one actually focuses on children from the high tier all throughout high school. It's also split up by age group, which I absolutely love, and it offers examples of what to expect for each stage, as well as the biggest nutrition focus for that stage, and how to tackle challenges that commonly arise. It also covers really popular parent questions like how to introduce allergens to your baby, and whether introducing solids will actually help your baby sleep better at night, which is a question I often hear as a registered dietitian. And it also provides really helpful concrete examples of which nutrients are most important for each stage and where to find those nutrients in foods. In it, you'll also find guidance on how to introduce foods with examples and schedules that are appropriate both for puree feedings or baby-led weaning. This book also provides handy appendices for examples listing foods richest in each nutrient, as well as referrals to additional resources, whether books or websites, that tackle various child nutrition topics. Another aspect of this book that I've really enjoyed are the many real-life examples taken from interactions that these dietitians have had with their clients throughout the years. And I also really enjoyed that there was a section dedicated to breaking free from your food attitudes and relationship with food that you had growing up. And I find that this topic is really important because the way that you see food and the relationship that you have with it as a parent is very likely to influence the way that your child will grow up seeing food and the relationship that they will have with it. So I really like that they included this part in the book as well. The fourth book I'd like to share is called Helping Your Child with Extreme Picky Eating by Katia Rowell and Jenny McLaughlin. Now, thankfully, my little one is not an extreme picky eater by any means, but I found the tips shared in this book really interesting and useful nonetheless. And this one is written by a family doctor and a certified speech-language pathologist that specializes in child feeding disorders. And it covers all of the various reasons that may cause your child to have a picky eating behavior, whether those are physical or mental, as well as the counterproductive feeding strategies to avoid. This book is loaded with tips to help you help your little one expand their palate in a stress-free, pressure-free way without needing to bribe or negotiate or reward or punish or cook 2 different meals for your family, because I don't know many families who truly have the time for that. I found this book to be a really easy read, but unlike the other books that I've mentioned earlier, the chapters in this one are actually quite a bit longer, and I don't know about you, but I hate stopping mid-chapter, like putting a book down mid-chapter. So I found that I was way less likely to pick up this book when I knew that I had only a limited amount of time to read at night or while my little one napped, which meant that it took me an incredible amount of time, way more time than it should have had, taken for me to finish this book, because it's really not that big of a book, but it took me a really long time. The final book on my list is called Child of Mine, and it's written by Alina Petre. And this book came highly recommended by my dietitian colleagues, especially the ones specializing in pediatrics. So I was definitely looking forward to diving right in. And like the first 3, it's also written by a registered dietitian, but what's particular about this registered dietitian is that she's the source of the feeding approach known as the division of responsibility, which a lot of feeding experts rely on when recommending to parents the best way to feed their children. So you can kind of see this book as the OG of child nutrition books. Now, I don't want to go too much into detail about this feeding approach because I think it would probably take a video on its own to really describe it properly. If you want me to make a video on its own, just let me know in the comments below. But in short, this focuses on which party is responsible for what. For instance, the parent is responsible for deciding what they're going to offer their child in terms of food and when they're going to offer it, but the child is the one responsible for deciding whether they're going to eat, and if they're going to eat, what they're going to eat from what the parent offered and how much of it they're going to eat. And basically, when each party focuses on their own responsibility, feeding goes way more smoothly, it prevents power struggles, and it also helps children retain that intrinsic sense of hunger and satiety that so many of us adults lose with time. So I think that's really beneficial, and all in all, I just find it a really stress-free way to feed your child, which is why I personally love this approach. In addition to covering her division of responsibility approach in detail in the book, Alina Petre also splits nutrition topics by age group from the newborn all the way to the preschooler stage, and discusses a bunch of other interesting topics, for example, feeding in childcare or realistic expectations about mealtime etiquette, as well as how to make mealtimes more pleasant and how to best manage sweets. The downside is that each section is very text-rich and it has very little graphics, so basically this book reads more like a textbook than a leisurely nutrition book, I guess, but the information shared in it is pure gold, so it's definitely worth a read. So those are the child nutrition books that I've enjoyed reading this year, and if you have any recommendations of your own, please leave them down below because I'd love to check them out, and I'm sure other people might as well. And with that said, that's all I've got for today. Until next time, ciao ciao!